Chances are, if you're a YouTuber or even a consumer, you've already heard about FTC's new rules regarding consumer reviews and artificial social media influence. Today, we're going to talk a lot about that. We're going to dive into some of the rules themselves, and we are going to set straight a lot of the misinformation that is going around and try to demystify this for both other content creators and consumers so that you know what to expect. So let's just get right into this, shall we? First up, again, this is from the proposed rules. I wanted to share this with you. So some of this is going to be legal jargon. I will try to explain it as we go. Once again, I want to remind everybody I'm not a lawyer, but I do play one on YouTube. And so all the things here are for informational purposes and entertainment. For real legal advice, you need to talk to your attorney. But you'll find that a lot of these things are pretty simple to understand. The FTC takes the extra step of defining some of these terms for folks so that you can truly understand it. There are a lot of articles that I've been reading, seeing posted, comments from other YouTubers who are making posts and or videos. And quite frankly, there's a lot of wishful thinking in there. And you just might be surprised to learn that really this law doesn't change much of anything. And I'll explain why as we go through it to the end. Some of it may surprise you, some of this information will be second nature to you. You will wonder why anybody thought any different. So let's just get right into it. First up, we're going to talk about the FTC's justification for these new rules. They took some time up front, and I'm going to just briefly go through this to explain the prevalence of these misleading consumer reviews and customer testimonials. And so I wanted to share those with you because I think it's important to understand the basis for which the government thinks they should be stepping in and pushing out further regulation. You'll see here what we have is Section A, which covers fake and false consumer reviews or testimonials. It says comments from the platform support a finding that fake consumer reviews are prevalent. In 2020, Amazon asserted it proactively stopped more than 200 million suspected fake reviews. In 2021, according to the company, Google blocked or removed more than 95 million Google Maps reviews for policy violations. In 2022, it removed millions of fake, inorganic, or otherwise malicious Google Play reviews. Yelp commented that in 2021, its recommendation software identified about 19% of reviews as not recommended. In 2021, TripAdvisor reported flagged 3.6% of reviews submitted, or about 1 million reviews, as fraudulent. Trustpilot stated that in 2021, accounts deemed to be review sellers submitted more than 60,000 reviews of US businesses. It identified and filtered the reviews and blocked the accounts associated with them. So right now we're seeing the justification, and specifically around customer reviews and testimonial, the justification is centered around the prevalence of fake reviews. Where it will be interesting to see as we go through this and talk about this a little is what constitutes a fake review? What constitutes a false customer testimonial? For example, right now, a lot of media companies, video game companies, as well as film, movie, TVs, are targets of what is known as review bombing. For those of you who don't understand what review bombing is, it's when news or information comes out about a movie, TV show, video game that runs counter to a large group of people's culture. They will purposely bombard review sites about that product, comments on YouTube, comments on, Rotten Tomatoes, things like that, posting reviews with their displeasure about said controversy. And this happens on both sides of the political spectrum, whether you're on the left or the right. each has people that are doing this, and it's not necessarily politically motivated. It's a natural reaction from fans of franchises or fans of a specific product mixed with people who are political and disagree with the ideology themselves. But the combination of the two creates this uh, flash mob effect where a wave of people will bombard these consumers with or these review sites with complaints about the business or the product that they're putting out, i.e., a video game, a movie, TV show. So it'll be interesting to see as we read through this. If you think about some of those, how do these new proposed rules affect review bombing? And then we're going to talk as we go through this is how do these new rules affect bloggers, YouTubers, other social media content creators in the reviews that they post about products? I think what you're going to find, what you're going to hear as we go through this over the next, probably 20, 30 minutes, maybe even a little longer. So I know this is a long video and appreciate you sticking around for it. I will try to put bookmarks in the bottom so you can go to a chapter if you're particularly interested on a specific subject as part of these rules. I will put that in there so you can jump to that. But here we go with the initial prevalence of reviews, false reviews. Next up, maybe. So next up, we're going to skip down to where we get to review suppression. This is an important piece because um, some of this is about some of the controversy about these reviews, specifically as we're talking about uh, flash mobs or the review bombs is what is the suppression around this, right? There's another controversy. It's not just fake reviews, but are you removing legitimate reviews of people that have legitimate complaints about your product or service and where this runs afoul? And so it says, this again is all about the justification. It says the AMPR address two types of review suppression. One type involves a seller's website representing that the consumer reviews displayed represent most or all of the reviews submitted when in fact reviews are being suppressed based upon their negativity. Trustpilot commented that it was aware of the suppression of negative reviews on retailer or business websites. So this comes back to when you go to a business's website and you'll see they have reviews on their actual website. Often you'll notice, and this is by far runs the gambit of specific manufacturers' sites. So, not necessarily places like Walmart and Amazon, but if you were to go beyond them to the company's site that produces the product or good you're looking at, their reviews, you'll notice almost always they are 5-star or positive reviews. Why? Because they are curating those reviews. They are removing the negative and only leaving the positive. Those of us in the home arcade space can kind of find a similar effect at games in their official fan page when people were posting comments and reviews about the At Games Legends 4KP when it had significant lag or damage in shipping, things like that, was actively removing those comments and those posts. Moreover, in some cases, they actually banned those people from the group. That is an example of review suppression, right? So that action bot would potentially violate these rules. Again, we're going to talk more about the rules themselves and why you're going to find out that many of them, in fact, all of them, are redundant and actually not needed. And the FTC themselves admits this in their proposed rulemaking. So, the other type of review suppression addressed in the ANPR is suppression by unjustified legal threat or physical threat. The comments in response to the ANPR support a determination that such review suppression is prevalent. Yelp said it constantly confronts the use of abusive and questionable or justified legal threats to suppress reviews. Trustpilot has seen cases, mostly outside of the United States, where businesses have threatened consumers if they do not delete negative reviews. A comment from Ubiquitous Advising described a company in its local area that is constantly threatening and bullying reviewers in order to suppress bad reviews. The transparency company said every year thousands of lawyers are hired to intimidate the authors of negative reviews. So, this again, this now goes back to when the company who produces this good or service can't delete the review on their own, they are going the extra step of intimidating and harassing their customers who did not have a positive experience or review. You see this oftentimes in automotive repair companies, some in the hospitality industry, like hotels and things like that. So it's always something to keep your eye on and is illegal, right? So here they're saying that's the second type of review suppression the FTC is really concerned about. Okay, now some of the things you might be here for, right? This is another really interesting one, the one specifically that YouTube creators have been all abuzz about and talking about over the last 24 to 48 hours. And that is the indicators of social media influence. And it says, in order to sell or market themselves or their products or services, some individuals and businesses misrepresent their social media influence by buying fake followers, fake subscribers, fake start printed page 49377 views, whatever that means. I think it's supposed to say fake views, but then there's a link in there for some of this information and other similar inauthentic indicators of social such influence. So they're saying here we need to regulate. Again, this isn't the regulation, this isn't the rule itself, this is the justification. So they're saying there are indeed YouTubers, X posters, Instagram influencers, TikTok influencers, you name it, runs the gambit, Twitch, etc., that are buying fake influence. They're going out and purchasing subs, they're purchasing views, they're purchasing likes, follows, etc., in order to give the impression that they are bigger and more influential than they actually are. Why is this a problem? It's the exact opposite reason of why fake reviews from uh, businesses is. In this case, social media influencers have not only an effect on consumers themselves, who will look at bigger channels and give them more respect because look at all these other people are following them, right? They must be telling the truth. They must have knowledge of these things. They're a trusted source, so I should trust them too. So that's number one. They have a big effect on consumers. The second is in this situation, the influencer is the business and their customer is a company seeking a review in those kind of instances where the company or the influencer is looking for access to products or information in order to use that information on their channel to grow their own channel, which is their own business, right? Whether hobby or you're in it for profit or fun, it doesn't matter. Your YouTube channel as a content creator, you are a small business because you are earning revenue and other goods from making the content. Heck, you may not even make any money and you may not make any reviews, but maybe you're a subject matter expert who's using it for exposure in order to book speaking engagements or increase your opportunity for better jobs. Those are all financial gains. So you are a business in that case. And therefore, the people who watch you and the people who enlist your help in advertising their information have to trust that the influence you've built is legitimate. It is not purchased, it is not fake. And when I say purchased, I mean specifically you're going out and buying X number of subs or buying X number of views. That is faux influence. There is going to be a distinction between that and normal business promotions. We'll talk about that more later. All right, now we're getting into, again, a little bit of expansion. So now they've laid out the justification for each of their rules, and we skipped over a few because they are so blatantly obvious there wasn't any reason to go over it. Now we're going into, why do we actually need these rules to overcome those issues that the FTC has pointed out as real problems. And this is in Section 4, Reasons for the Proposed Rule on the Use of Consumer Reviews and Testimonials. It says the Commission believes the proposed rule will substantially improve its ability to combat certain specified, clearly unfair and deceptive acts and practices involving consumer reviews or testimonials. Although such practices are already unlawful under Section 5 of the FTC Act, which prohibits unfair or deceptive acts or practices, the proposed rule may increase deterrence against the practices in the first instance and will allow the Commission to seek civil penalties against the violators and more readily obtain monetary redress for their victims, as discussed below. The proposed rule would accomplish those goals without significantly burdening honest businesses and provide benefits to consumers and honest competitors. So here, the FTC flat out tells you all the things in this bill that they are about to regulate in this, not bill, but in this rule, in this new regulation, are already illegal. There's nothing in here new. There's nothing in here that is taking a practice that is happening today and suddenly makes it illegal. Everything in here that is being addressed is already a crime, and it's still prevalent. So one has to argue if these rules will actually do anything. Much like many laws, this is largely going to be a feel good law. They allow them to propose new rules so they can send out threatening letters, but the reality of the situation, everything in here is already illegal, already enforceable under the law, and if they were serious about stopping these things, they'd already be doing it. And in fact, many states are, but it's not happening everywhere. So again, there's some question as to whether any of this will actually help or do anything. But anytime there's at least some publicity around this, that should have some deterrent effect. But let's be real, the people that are doing the heavy damage, the really big scammers, the really big people guilty of intimidating their customers, to remove bad reviews, things like that, they're going to do that anyway, right? They've already they know it's illegal. They know nothing's happened to them to date. They're going to continue to do it. They're just as with in anything, there are always people with moral virtues that will not break the law, and then there are always people that do not care who will gladly lie to you and continue to do so. And oftentimes, especially in today's society, they go completely unpunished. So the idea that suddenly this is going to help and there's going to be this big crackdown, that's a lot of wishful thinking. Oftentimes, like I said, these are just to make a bunch of politicians and, uh, you know, politicians feel like they're doing something when they're not really doing much of anything. In section 5, now we're going to talk about each rule. So this is where we're going to get into a lot of the legal mumbo jumbo. This section is going to take a little longer. Some are short, some more in depth, but there is some very important information you need to have here. And this first section is really going to set the stage for everything else to come. So you need to understand the definitions, and that is where they start here, because this is where a lot of people are getting these rules wrong. This is where the media has put out a lot of misinformation because even they don't seem to understand it. They haven't done the deep read through the rules. This is where a lot of the posts I've seen are completely off about what we're talking about here. And these definitions, these clarity that are provided are going to really narrow the scope of what is impacted by these new rules. So, first up, of course, overview and scope of proposed rule of the use of consumer reviews and testimonials. This is, again, specifically this whole thing. So, we have A, key definitions. Proposed 465.1 would provide definitions for 12 terms as they appear in proposed blah, 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 including, among others, definitions of the term consumer reviews, consumer testimonials, and celebrity testimonials. This is essentially everything that this rule is covering is those three terms. And so we need to make sure that when we begin talking about the rest of this, that we understand exactly what the FTC means when it says these. Because this, again, is where people are getting it wrong. The term consumer review is defined in proposed 46.51 subsection D as a consumer's evaluation or a purported consumer's evaluation of a product, service, or business that is submitted by the consumer or purported consumer, and that is published to a website or platform dedicated in whole or in part to receiving and displaying such reviews. I'm going to read that again. Published to a website or platform dedicated in whole or in part to receiving and displaying such reviews. That definition states that the consumer reviews include consumer ratings, regardless of whether they include any text or narrative. The definition includes purported customers so that it covers reviews by authors who do not exist. These are, again, the bots, the fake subs, the fake reviewers. It does not include all consumer evaluations of products or services. Let's say this one again. I'm going to stress it. It does not include all consumer evaluations of products or services. And here we go, such as a blog post or social media post evaluating a product. It is limited to those submitted to a website or platform or portion thereof dedicated to such reviews. So, what does that mean? That means it doesn't cover reviews by social media influencers. That's right. What you see on Instagram from an influencer, what you see on YouTube, what you see on X, Twitch, you name it, is not regulated as a consumer review. So that is very important to understand. You're still regulated by all the stuff about disclosures and deceptive business practices, but this proposed rule strictly targets customer reviews, individuals who purchase the item who are posting the review to a review site or specifically a section of a website dedicated for reviews. That is what we're talking about here. A very narrow scope of reviews, like on Amazon, where you can go down and look at the reviews of somebody who purchased this product or says they purchased this product about that product or that business. That's what we're talking about. Yelp, Google, the Google reviews, those are what we're talking about. Those kinds of things, not influencer product reviews. Like when somebody gets an arcade one up and does a review on it, or somebody goes out and purchases an At Games Legends 4KP and does a video on it. Those don't count. That is not what we're talking about. So be clear, most of these protections have nothing to do with social media and YouTube content creation. You need to understand that. So the term consumer testimonial is defined and proposed, and this is another one that people may be confused about. The term consumer testimonial is defined and proposed 4615 subsection E as an advertising or promotional message that consumers are likely to believe reflects the opinion, belief, or experience of a consumer who has purchased, used, or otherwise had experience with a product, service, or business. Proposed 4651 subsection B provides a corresponding definition of the term celebrity testimonial. It defines the term celebrity testimonial as an advertising or promotional message that consumers are likely to believe reflects the opinions, beliefs, or experiences of a well-known person who purchased, used, or otherwise had experience with a product, service, or business. So again, what is a customer testimonial? These appear in blurbs on websites, on blurbs in marketing. You may have seen ads on your favorite mobile game when some celebrity pops up and tells you just how great Raid Shadows Legends are. Those are customer testimonials. and or celebrity testimonies. Obviously, when you see a celebrity on there, somebody who's been in film and TV, uh, those are celebrity testimonials. What is on YouTube, by and large, are not celebrity testimonials. Content creators aren't celebrities, albeit a few, right? There are obviously huge ones that are celebrity. The key is well known persons. So most people know who Mr. Beast is, but how many people do you think know who the Corner Kate is or Gamer Fridge, right? It is a very small group of people in that community that have any idea who these influencers are, right? So they're not well known. Now, of course, anybody can argue anything. And I'm sure a lawyer could go out there and try to argue that, well, in this consumer space, they're well known because they have X number of subs, but they have to be well known at large, right? In order to influence massive numbers of consumers, which is who they're trying to protect here, large groups of consumers, you have to be well known outside of some really tiny niche, right? And let's face it, home arcade is really tiny niche. Even retro games, which feels a lot bigger when you have some people with upwards of 1 million subscribers, feels like a bigger group, but it's still tiny compared to, true celebrity testimonials. So there's some gray area there. The larger the channel, the more likely they would be considered well known. But as you get down to the bottom with the people that are, 50,000, 25,000, or even way less, 500 or less, there's no doubt that you could not argue that they are well-known persons. So that is important to remember how these new rules impact you as a creator or you as a blogger, social media influencer, etc. All right, so now we're going to flow right into fake or false consumer reviews, testimonials, and celebrity testimonials. The rule would prohibit certain types of deceptive content, including consumer reviews, consumer testimonials, and celebrity testimonials. Proposed would prohibit a business from writing, creating, or selling consumer reviews, consumer testimonials, or celebrity testimonials that A, are by someone who does not exist, so again, fake, bots, etc., is by someone who did not use or otherwise have experience with the product, so saying somebody used it when they didn't, product, service, or business that is the subject of the review or testimonial. So again, people that didn't actually use it. These are things like going to your family members and saying, "Can you review my business and give me a good review," even though they never had anything to do with it. Or C, materially misrepresents the reviewers or testimonialists' experience with the product, service, or business. So this is where sites like Rotten Tomatoes are likely going to use these to delete quote unquote review bombs. But I would argue that's a gray area because what they're going to say is you couldn't have experienced this movie. It's not been released yet. But again, it is about the experience with the product, service, or business. And who's to say that their experience with that business isn't justified based on simply the information they have about from a trailer or comments made by an actor in the movie or clips of the video game, things like that. Who's to say that's not enough to form an opinion and have a review, a legitimate review about one of those sources? It is very much a gray area that we will likely see challenged in court should people decide to challenge it. But keep in mind, this seems like it could go both ways on things like review bombing. Next, and I should say review gating in case that word gets picked up as something else. But anyway, proposed 465D subsection B said would render it a deceptive act or practice for a business to purchase consumer reviews or disseminate or cause the dissemination of consumer reviews, celebrity testimonials about the business or one of its products or services if the business knew or should have known that the review or testimonial A was by someone who does not exist, B is by someone who did not use or otherwise have experience with the product, service, or business, or C, material misrepresents the reviewer or testimonial's experience with the product or service in accordance with proposed 465H. Purchases a consumer review means to provide something of value, such as money, goods, or another review in exchange for a consumer review. So again, This means you can't go onto a site and trade reviews with another business. Hey, you review my product, I'll review yours. You can't go buy fake reviews. You can't pay somebody for a positive review if they don't truly believe that or have never used their review. This is all back to, again, posting a review to a website or a section of a website dedicated to reviews. You can't put up fake or non legitimate reviews. It's that simple. Very, very, very simple. And finally, it says 2 subsection C would make it deceptive act or practice for a business to procure customer reviews about the business or one of the product services for posting on a third party platform or website if the business knew or should have known that the review was by someone who does not exist, someone who did not use the product, material or represent, et cetera, et cetera. So, again, enticing people for fake reviews or using bots or purchasing reviews from people who sell. Somebody could go out there and say, "Hey, I want to sell. I'll review any product you want for $25." That would be illegal. All right, consumer review repurposing. We'll blow through this one. This one's pretty stupid and explanatory, so I'm not going to read it all. So essentially, consumer review repurposing would mean, let's say you're selling a diet pill, and you have a competitor that sells a similar diet pill, and taking the review from, say, Metabolife and applying it to uh, Joe Blow's diet pill, and saying they're the same because basically you're using the same ingredients, doesn't work. You can't do that. You can't say, "Hey, they really love this product, so therefore they would really love mine." You can't fake people out and reuse that. You can't. Let's go more granular. You can't take a review, and this is something that's really problematic on Amazon. You can't take a review of, say, uh, 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 an LG TV that is, uh, you know, 42 inches, and the model is essentially the same model, but there's also a 68-inch model, and mix those reviews together. You cannot apply the review of the 42-inch to a review of the 68-inch. And that is super common on Amazon. Amazon kind of lumps those in. If the model numbers are close, it considers the size something different. Well, those are actually different products. Like, they have different experience. The power draws and things like that that come from a larger screen are different from a smaller screen. So the blurring the lines like that creates uncertainty and can be and should be considered deceptive reviews. So that's really all this section is saying. You can't cross pollinate like that. Now we get into the buying positive or negative consumer reviews. Like, right, this goes both ways. You could obviously buy fake reviews for your opponent, your competitors, right, and knock them down a peg or two. So again, proposed 465.4 would prohibit a business from offering compensation or other incentives in exchange for a condition on the writing or creation of a consumer reviews expressing a particular sentiment, whether positive or negative, regarding the product, service, or business that is subject of review. This is super prevalent practice that is always been illegal but continues to this day. This would be people saying, "We will pay you $25 to post a review of our product, but we want it to be positive." Or, "We will give you a coupon to go post your review." Or, "We will give you a chance to win something if you go post a positive review on X and tag us in it." All of these things are deceptive. They're enticed to get people to produce um, biased reviews in order to benefit the business. And if those reviews are not genuine, and when you offer an enticement, you're basically guaranteeing disingenuous reviews, then it's considered a deceptive business practice. So, pretty clear cut. Don't offer people benefits for posting reviews. And again, it's a particular sentiment. So you can still kind of like do it generically, but if you got to let them post good or bad and give the same people the same benefit regardless of where they do it. So for most businesses, this is a practice you should steer away from unless you're really confident in your product or service and you have no interest in being deceptive. And if somebody puts it out there negative, you just leave it. Again, something we've seen consumers or it's not consumers, but businesses in this space do. So be very clear. This is potentially deceptive if you are removing the negative ones or vice versa, making negative ones on your competitors' products. All right, so now we're going to go to consumer reviews and consumer testimonials. So this one is important because I feel like this one is up for rife manipulation. So I figured I would just head this one off right now. What is an insider consumer review or consumer testimonial? Again, got to remember what we're talking about when we say consumer reviews and consumer testimonials. These aren't social media influencers. These are specifically people posting reviews on review sites or in sections of review sites, or celebrity or consumer testimonials in your marketing materials, etc. So, proposed 4655 addresses company insider consumer reviews and consumer testimonials in three different ways. Proposed 465A applies to insider reviews and testimonials proposed, B applies to insider testimonials proposed, and C applies to insider reviews. So there's a lot here. So A would prohibit an officer or manager of a business from writing or creating a consumer review or consumer testimonial about the business or product or service if the consumer review or consumer testimonial does not have a clear and conspicuous disclosure of the officer or manager's relationship to the business. So again, you work for the company, especially if you're a management or equity holder or officer of the company. You can't review your own company unless you clearly state, I am X at this company, so that people know your opinion is biased. It's not that you can't have an opinion about your own product or service, uh, but you need to disclose that you have a stake in that company, right? Glenn's Retro Show is a great example. He has a social media or influence page. Now he's not posting reviews on his thing on his page, other than I guess you consider that marketing. And so he provides his opinion about his product and services, but he's always clear that it is his company that he is talking about. He discloses it over and over that he is an officer of that company. So consumers who watch his content can be expected to understand that Glenn has some bias about his own product, right? He's the owner. And so they can take that into account when he talks about the quality of his products, the quality of the services and things that he offers. That's totally legit. So as long as he's disclosing that, which Glenn does, which is why everybody loves Glenn, because not only does he do these great, make products for the home arcade, but he is super crystal clear about what he is doing, who he is, and provides that added layer of honesty about his business. So hats off to him. Wish we had more businesses like that. Um, Let's see. C defines clear and conspicuous to mean that a required disclosure is easily noticeable, difficult to miss, and easily understandable by ordinary consumers, including in all of the ways listed in the definition. This is the same definition the Commission proposed in its negative option rule notice of proposed rulemaking in accordance with proposed blah, blah, blah. Officers, again, clear and conspicuous, meaning that you've typically got to put it visually, you typically got to put it audibly so that all types of people can notice it. You typically have to repeat it. So let's say you're doing a live stream, you need to do it a few times so that people who join late don't miss your disclosure that happened at the beginning of the video. You can't assume that the people watching the content, and again, we're kind of off the rails here, but I'm mixing some of the disclosure thing, but they're talking about the same kind of disclosure. So I'm using the influencer need to disclose as an example, right? When you're an influencer, you're doing a live stream, you got to disclose multiple times. So if you're a business and you're doing the consumer reviews and things like that, you need to clearly disclose in that customer review or testimonial that you are an officer of the company or a manager in the company. Again, this rule, because I've probably confused things a little bit there, is specifically targeted towards consumer reviews and testimonials posted to sites specifically about consumer reviews or sections of sites around those, not social media influence. 4655B applies to consumer testimonials in advertisements disseminated by or on behalf of a business. So again, we're we're back to the advertisements. And not social media posts, right? Specifically advertisements. Now, if somebody pays a YouTuber, product, good, whatever, that's an advertisement and needs to be disclosed. Um, that you were paid or received some good. It would prohibit a business from disseminating or causing the dissemination of certain consumer testimonials about the business or its product or service if the consumer testimonial is written by the business officers, managers, employees, or agents, or any of their relatives without clear and conspicuous disclosure of those relationships. The provisions would apply only when the business. So, again, further narrowing down this to not just all influencers, but only those who are officers, employees, or people related to those employees of the business. Um, or an agent of the business. So somebody that has like a direct relationship with the company and not just, hey, I know some people there and hey, I've talked to them online. That is not a relationship. A relationship is fostered over time. There's some sort of mutually beneficial arrangement between the two. You have a lifetime of experience with the person. That would be a friendship type relationship. And those aren't even required by this. It's specifically relation or business related activities from employment. C applies to solicitations of employee or and other insider reviews. So this is where we get further down the line. So now just any employee, not just the officers and managers, or other insider reviews. So, what are other insider reviews? Again, agents of the company. So, these would be maybe contract workers. Maybe you have a relationship with another company who supplies you parts. Those are agent insider relationships, or maybe you use sales teams, things like that. Would prohibit under some circumstances, or outside sales, I should say. It would prohibit under some circumstances an officer or manager's solicitation of consumer reviews from employees, agents, relatives that result in reviews that don't clearly, conspicuously disclose the reviewer relationship. The provision is limited to situations the person soliciting the review knew or should have known the prospective reviewer's relationship, failed to instruct the prospective reviewer to disclose clearly and conspicuously, and knew or should have known the review appeared such a disclosure and failed to take remedial steps encourages the perspective. So again, the actions of the officer or the manager goes to their employees and says, hey, we need you guys to go out and post reviews, positive reviews of our new products so that we can get going. And yeah, don't tell them you work here. Totally, totally against this rule, right? You have to disclose. So if you're telling your team to go out and post reviews, they need to put on there, I work for this company, right? So that's what we're saying here is you're instructing people who work for you or have a relationship, again, an agent type relationship with your company to post those reviews. Now we're going to roll into the company controlled review website or entity. So this is when the company has their own reviews, again, talking about I'll use At Games as another example because their website, if you go through their website, they have this section for every product where you can review that product. So again, this would apply to sites like that. And they're not the only ones. It's not a criticism of At Games. Lots and lots and lots of companies do this. I just think in this space, in this home arcade community, that's one we all know and have probably seen their website. So that's why I use them as an example. Not a negative or positive thing. Prohibits proposed 4656 prohibits a business from representing that a website, organization, or entity is providing its independent reviews or opinions in a category of business, product, or service that includes the business or its products and services when the business control, owns, or operates that website, organization, or entity. So this even goes beyond that example, right? So I gave you the example of their own website where they allow reviews, but you could also have a secondary review site. So the example here I'm going to give is like AT&T, right? Probably shouldn't mention them out loud. Who knows? They might come after me. But again, this is just informational. But the telecom companies are notorious for creating so-called consumer websites to advocate for positive uh, press and information about things that really consumers aren't on board with. So they could have, say, a site set up that is designed to review AT&T, the company, and they put up a bunch of fake reviews saying how great AT&T is and all this other stuff. Again, this is all hypothetical. I'm not saying they actually do this, wink, wink. But um, so they could enlist this faux organization to set up the site to post a bunch of positive things about them so that if, somebody's considering their product or whatever, that it looks good. But it's really, again, being manipulated to only show positive things and any negative things are being removed. Well, it makes it look like it's an independent site, but it's actually owned and operated by that company. Therefore, it's even more egregious, the deception when they do that. So, not only your own site, not only third party reviewer sites, but other sites that you may own under different headings and names and banners. Now, review suppression. Proposed Rule 4657 addresses two types of review suppression. The first type addressed in proposed Section A would prohibit anyone from using an unjustified legal threat or physical threat, intimidation, or false accusation to prevent the creation of a consumer review or cause the removal of or all part of a review in accordance with the proposed Section I. An unjustified legal threat is defined as a threat to initiate or file a baseless legal action, such as an action for defamation that challenges truthful speech or matters of opinion. So you see this oftentimes on places like Yelp that allow a business to respond to a customer review, right? A consumer review. Again, all of this is just about these review websites and some of the advertising materials with customer testimonials. So, so if somebody posts a review and says, "Oh, this person was really rude to me," and then they turn around and reply to that review, call the person a liar, slander them, saying, "We're going to sue you for slandering us." All of these things are now and always have been illegal as deceptive business practices. Yet these companies, there are companies out there, especially the bad ones that have earned a bad reputation, who take this tactic, right? You should know when reading that, when doing those things, if you come across them, you probably should steer clear. Because if they're treating the person who had concerns that way, they're treating everybody that way. But again, that's the tactic they use to try to scare people who have had negative experiences into taking down their site, their review of that business. Next up, this is the important one. We're going to spend a little time here. I know this is a long video. We're almost 50 minutes into it. But for a lot of people, this is kind of what they came for. This is the meat of content creators' regulations, what they need to be concerned with. And so a lot of you are here for this. So I want to spend a little bit more time here, and it is really kind of the last section we're going over. So even though we're going to spend some time here, we're nearing the end, right? And again, put the chapters in. So hopefully if you weren't interested in all those other things, you just jumped right here. If you've watched the whole thing, oh, so thankful. Really appreciate you guys who stuck through this because I'm here just trying to demystify some of this and help you understand everything that's going on. So let's talk about it. The misuse of fake indicators and social media influence. And I'm going to provide some examples without naming names to help you identify people that may be conducting this deceptive practice. Not asking, you should not target them, you should not harass them. That's not the point. This is all about consumer information, how you as a consumer can be on the lookout for these things because let's face it, the vast majority of consumers will never look into these things. They will just move along and leave themselves rife with this. And I am not, anything I share here is data wise is not going to be definitive, but it's going to be used. I'm going to demonstrate it as where you should be questioning, right? I don't know the actions of these creators that I'm going to focus on. All I know is my own action as a creator. And so I'm going to use that as a basis to explain why the two examples I'm going to provide, I believe, have done some sort of um, increase to their social media content. Both suspected actions that would be in violation of these rules and ones that would be in alignment with these rules because there's very clear distinctions on what is fake and what is real and what is allowed and what isn't, right? So let's just get into this one: misuse of fake indicators for social media influence. Proposed 4658, and these are not proposed anymore, right? These went into effect. Uh, Prohibits the misuse of indicators of social media influencers as defined by proposed 4651, subsection F. The term indicators of social media influence refers to any metric used by the public to make assessments of an individual or entity's social media influencers, such as followers, friends, connections, subscribers, views, plays, likes, reposts, comments. Lots of these things, right? So you can't have fake followers on X or Instagram. You can't have fake friends on Facebook. You can't have fake connections on LinkedIn. You can't have fake subscribers on YouTube. You can't have fake views. You can't have fake plays on things like um, Apple Play or any of the other music streaming services. You can't have fake likes on things like YouTube and Instagram, meaning bots or you're paying other people to do it. You can't have reposts. Hey, we go out and repost my ex. Will you go out and share this? That you're paying somebody to go do it. You can't do that. And comments. You can't pay somebody to post fake comments to your videos or your Instagram posts, et cetera, et cetera. Proposed rule 4658, subsection A, prohibits anyone from selling fake indicators of social media influence that can be used by persons or business to misrepresent their influence for a commercial purpose. Proposed 4658B prohibits anyone from procuring fake indicators of social media influence to misrepresent their influence or importance for a commercial purpose. So the first section says you as an influencer can't do these things. Now, this section says, you business person, you can't sell these things either. So now it's a rule, specific rule that says you can't buy, and a specific rule that says you can't sell these fake social media targets. So both sides of the coin are now further being regulated. But again, as a reminder, all these things are already illegal. So there's that. All right. Let's talk. So the first thing is we're going to dive into Social Blade of some YouTubers. Not going to mention who they are. Doesn't matter who they are. They likely good people that maybe had good intentions, but we're going to use these to provide some example as to where you can suspect certain behavior versus others. And so what I want you to focus on when you look on Social Blade, for those who don't know Social Blade, it's a website that provides kind of a public deep dive into influencers, specifically YouTube and some of these other sites, where you can see when they started, how many videos they made, how many subscribers they have. And they get kind of an overall score of their quality by Social Blade. You can see analytics on their growth. So here we're taking a look specifically the analytics over the last, you know, year to date, essentially, basically about a year on their views and subscribers. And these are YouTube channels, and I think they serve as a great example of what you should be looking at. So the first one is views, and on this channel, we'll call it Channel A, because again, not targeting anyone here. There's no reason to talk names or anything like that, because again, I'm sure people have whatever motivation, and it doesn't make them a bad person that they've done some of these things, because they might not and likely did not do these things unintentionally, but there are or intentionally. There are people out there that do these things intentionally to deceive people, and then there are people that do these things because they feel like they have to, and other in order to keep up with the Joneses and things like that. So a lot of people have varying views about people who quote unquote purchase subscribers or purchase influence because of these issues, right? It's just could be considered deceptive. It creates false sense of expertise. There's all kinds of things in here that people rightfully should be concerned with. But again, I think the competitive nature of these platforms and the way they work, they create an incentive for people to want to do these things. So you can't always just say, just because a person did X or may have done X that makes them a bad person, in my opinion. You need to treat every instance separately. Don't paint people with broad brushes. Remember, we live in America. People should be innocent until proven guilty. Of course, unless you don't live in America, in which case you really should get your governments to switch from prove your innocence to prove the guilt government. But anyway, so here we see a pattern of views on this YouTube channel, and you'll notice it's relatively consistent, right? Of course, we have a valley here in January where views dipped way down for this channel. Then they bounced back up to that kind of baseline, which is that middle gray line. Then they spiked up a little bit, which likely means they probably had a video or two that went more viral than normal, so their views jumped way up. And then you have again kind of a flat line of views that with a slight increase and a little uptick at the end, just a little one. But we have a nice flat, relatively flat, minus the two big peaks and a little bit of trending up. Um, so that's important to understand because when you talk about YouTube, what you should generally see is some sort of correlation because you don't just gain subscribers out of thin air. Your subscribers come from viewing your content. And once they are subscribers, you typically will get some percentage of those subscribers watching your videos. And so you should be able to see a very similar pattern that should trend up slowly over time as you just grow naturally, right? Because let's say you get 10 subscribers, if only 10% watch your future videos, you should slowly be ticking up on your views 10%, even though you had those 10%, 10 views. And so month after month, that just grows and grows and grows, and creates this kind of growth pattern. But here with this channel, what you see is not a correlation, but suddenly as we get into September, the August, September timeframe, you see a sudden deviation start. And that, in data analytics terms, should set off red flags, right? It should be a correlation. When you see a deviation, you got to start asking questions. It doesn't mean anybody's guilty of anything. It means you should start asking questions. What accounts for the deviation? Because in general, when you look at a channel, the views to subscriber counts, the increased views, increased subscribers generally is right on, right? You're going to say like, "Hey, every 100 views I get one subscriber." I mean, that's generally how it's going to work. And I don't know, different channels will have different averages. I just threw that number out there off the top of my head. But here you see suddenly while the views are slightly trending up, the subscriber account does this kind of exponential L curve, just boom, right up, or J curve, sorry. Just boom, straight up. And so you have to be like, well, that's certainly odd. So you would ask questions like, what accounted for that sudden jet up, but yet not a correlating increase in views? Typically, you would see that analytics mirror or correlate directly because how do you get, let's say this subscriber has 100,000 subscribers. How would they suddenly get 50,000 or 75,000 ads, subscriber ads, without suddenly having way more views on a video showing it's gone viral and got a lot more exposure? It just doesn't happen. There's not some major thing where I can say, well, I just figured out how to convert viewers better. There is some of that, but you wouldn't see a day or night change. You would see a slow, gradual change as you became more effective at that technique over time. And here you just have a sudden spike. So one should question, hey, where did this sudden spike come from? And there may be a rational explanation, but I'm saying that this is where people will draw questions because they look at this disconnect between views and subscribers and they say, what happened here? Um, Next, we're going to take a look at somebody whoop, who publicly disclosed that they did a promotion with YouTube. Again, not going to name any particular people. There are lots of YouTubers who are in the business of YouTube who have videos about promotion. So don't assume you know who this is because there are a lot of people who have done this. ever since it was released in beta, like over a year ago. So there's lots of content creators you can see that did this kind of experiment. And what you see here is their views, right, are kind of all over the place leading up to that. And that's because some of their view videos go more viral than others. They have more interesting peak events happening, but you see a consistent subscriber ad all through that period up through May. And then as you get into June, and then in June, what do you see? You see a massive spike in subscribers and a correlating spike in views. So again, now we have a correlation. So there are a few things that could account for this. There could have been a major viral video posted that causes this correlation, because that's what you should see. You should naturally see an increase in view that correlates to an increase in subscribers. But here, we know there wasn't necessarily a viral trigger because, again, this person talked about this. What they did is they participated in YouTube's promotions, which is marketing, which is advertising. And what it does is instead of allowing fully on the YouTube algorithm recommending you to people outside your audience, your core group, is it allows you to use marketing, advertising to say, hey, show my video as a sponsored video in the list of videos that you recommend to consumers. So they can see in their video, this says sponsored underneath it, right? And it just puts the video in the list. It doesn't autoplay the video. It doesn't make anybody click on the video. It doesn't make anybody watch it. It doesn't make anybody subscribe it. It just ensures they see it and you have an opportunity to then get in front of that consumer. And so that's why you see this strong correlation. More people saw that this video existed. They actually clicked on it and watched it. Not only did they watch it, they subscribed to it, which is the behavior you see with normal videos. So you have this strong correlation. All they did was take the added step of, I'm going to pay to market my video so that I can get that thumbnail in front of more people. And hopefully, I did a good enough job on that thumbnail and that video that they will click and watch it. So here you see what should be considered not so taboo. It's definitely not in violation of this rule. This isn't fake social media influence. This is straight up just marketing. It's clearly marked as sponsored video. It doesn't deliver any views, it doesn't deliver any subscribers. It just relies on putting the thumbnail in front of people, and those people have to actively click, they have to actively watch, and they have to actively subscribe, which is completely different than, say, somebody going out and just buying subs from a bot farm, or some company that just has a bunch of people with millions of, hundreds of cell phones going through and just clicking on every people and doing all this stuff. And so you see that strong correlation. Now, in the interest of transparency, I'm going to show you my analytics from Social Blade. Again, you can look at all these if you want, go out there. And I'm going to tell you, I've never purchased a subscriber and I've never run a Google promotions or YouTube promotions, whatever you want to call it. But what I did have, and why I wanted to talk about this a little bit, is I had a series of PlayStation videos, but one in particular that just popped off about the PS5 30th anniversary. I was sitting at about 750 subs, hoping that maybe if I really grind by the end of the year, end of 2024, I can get to 1,000. Well, I posted one video on PlayStation that did, because they just had the 30th release. It was kind of a mad rush to do stuff. So I just said, hey, I'm going to do a video about this. It was interesting. I liked watching some of the people live purchase it. I purchased the items myself. So it's like, this is pretty interesting. I'm going to put it out there. And hey, it did all right. I got like 5,000 views on that video, which is by no means my largest video, but it certainly outperformed a lot of my other videos. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And I thought, wow, hey, I got a handful of subs out of this. That really helped. And then I saw on the news that, hey, there was, I think we're 2 days removed from the pre-sale event for the 30th PlayStation 30th Anniversary Pro Edition, and I saw on there that Sony had been canceling PS5 Pro 30th Anniversary orders, and I was like, "Oh man, that sucks." Like that would suck to have been one of those people that got into that very limited run and gotten screwed over days later to find out your thing got canceled and there's nothing you can do about it. So I thought that was interesting. So I did a video about it. And I started off with a dramatic story, and a lot of comments around it was how dramatic the start off was. I was inspired by one of my favorite YouTubers, the Y Files, to tell this story to start off the video. Um, and it just caught fire. I mean, it's by far the largest video I've ever done. It had well over 20,000 views in 24 hours. I was getting people hitting me out saying, "Wow, you just had something go viral," because it's like I'm seeing the recommendations for it and all this stuff. All it was pretty fun, right? And so, uh, you know, being wanting to double down on that success, right, I hit a few more videos, uh new stories coming out about the PS5 Pro 30th anniversary stuff, new information that came out, and I followed that up with that information, and they did well, but you saw the decline because the meat of that story was the cancellations. And so the next one did like 9 or 10,000, then 5,000, and now they're getting down more to normal level. But it's content that I've always, I'm a PlayStation consumer. I have a wall of PlayStation 5 stuff around here. I was a day one. In fact, one of the very first videos I ever did on this channel when I just played around with YouTube was unboxing the PS5. Um, so it's always interested me. I watch all these guys like RGT85 and Spawn Wave and, all these, uh, Wood at beat 'em ups. I watch all those guys. I love their content. And so it's like, hey, I have an interest in this. And now I have a bunch of subs that are that subscribe to me for that kind of content. And it's content I already watch and enjoy. Just like home arcade, I was influenced by the people I was watching and the products I like. I already like these content. I like the toys, right? I got inspired by PD7 to get back into toys when I had kind of tried to cure myself of that, all that stuff. So anyway, I'm off on a tangent. I digress. Um, but I enjoy talking about all those things. And this channel has always been about nostalgia and video games and movies and toys and all these things. And so they all kind of mesh together, but it was those videos that went completely viral. And so what I wanted to show is how, again, you see this correlation, knowing that I've never bought a sub, legitimate or otherwise, never run a promotion, more than say posting to a YouTube channel or a Facebook channel and saying, "Hey, I released a video." Typical marketing stuff. That's the same thing, right? If you've ever posted a link to your video in a Facebook group in hopes that people will go watch it, it's the same thing as paying YouTube advertising to go put it in a feed somewhere, so in hopes that people will click on it and watch it. That's the same practice, but one you're paying, one the people let you do it for free if that group allows people to self promote their YouTube content. But I've never paid to do the YouTube promotions, and I've never bought a single sub. And so here you have, for an entire year, my actually it's probably a little over a year since it goes. I'll take that back. It's not even a year because it only goes to February to October. So 8-ish months, right? You see a very clear correlation between when certain videos and news pop off and when they don't, and the subscriber growth with that, right? And so that's what a normal algorithm's going to look like. You're going to get that kind of chain with views and subs. There should be a clear correlation. Sometimes there won't be, and maybe something went a little more viral, but it wasn't actually popular. So, maybe a thumbnail was really attractive, so a ton of people clicked on it, but everybody stopped watching after 15 seconds. They lost interest, said, "What is this? This isn't anything I care about," and moved on. And so there you might see a spike in views, but not a corresponding spike in subs. But in general, you should see a similar pattern like this. So I wanted to show that as a baseline. Again, for these other two, here's an example of a paid promotion and still has that correlating bump, right? Increased views, increased subs, versus an anomaly, right? Somebody that stands out, that there is no correlation between a sudden jump in subscribers and only a modest jump in views. So something there doesn't jive, but I wanted to provide that information. So we'll wrap it up here, right? We're over an hour. And again, can't thank you enough if you stuck around. But one of the things I wanted to share was the severability. So, unfortunately, with this current administration in the White House, we've seen a rash of regulation all across industries, everywhere. New regs just being pushed through constantly or proposed. And virtually every single one of them has either been struck down by a court or been put on hold by that administration themselves based on backlash from the proposed changes. So there's a lot of question as to whether these new rules can even hold up, right? So they one of the reasons they're forthcoming with all this stuff is illegal is to try to head off any legal challenges. Say, no, this stuff's already against the law, so it should be totally fine. Um, and then this they add in, which is typical these days. And it's funny when you see a piece of legislation or rule that doesn't have this, but it is severability. So it basically says that should a court strike down any one of our new rules, anyone for any reason, that only rule that is affected is that one section. It doesn't negate the entire proposed rule change. So this is like a rip stop, right? If this one goes down, they don't all go down with it. uh, a court can decide anything they want from that standpoint, but this is an attempt to stop that, give them some avenue of appeal if some judge does take down the whole thing. But I just wanted to share that. So if you're hoping that one of these provisions seems onerous and it'll get struck down and negate them all, you would be wrong. Ideally, the rest will remain and just that one will go away. But we won't know any of that until it's actually challenged in court and somebody is successful one way or the other. So you made it all the way to the end. I can't believe it. This was a long one. We're clocking in at just under an hour and 20 minutes. I feel like, honestly, we just did a live stream, even though this is a recorded video. Not going to edit any of my comments. I'm just going to leave this unedited in the full view, just as I have shown it, because I want you to see it like uncut, unedited. So you have all my thoughts. Again, am going to try to add some chapters in here. I may edit things in that, I may shrink myself so you can see the screen better, things like that. But the rest of it's all going to be completely unedited and transparent for you all because I want you guys to have all the information and I want to be transparent. And you deserve it. You just sat here through a really long monologue from me on these proposed changes. And so, man, I sure would appreciate it if you would like, comment, and subscribe. If you made it all the way to the end, you might as well. I did this video because I was asked by a few people and started seeing other videos that weren't quite getting the story right. So I wanted to demystify some of this and try to get some of that misinformation taken out of the way. And so I guess I would leave it with like this. If you're hoping that a business who is contacting YouTubers and saying, we'd love to provide you a product in exchange for a positive review and it can't be negative, it's a gray area, right? It's already against the law. It's a deceptive practice, but it isn't really covered here, right? Because this is all about posting consumer reviews on consumer websites or sections of websites dedicated to consumer reviews. The only social media influence around this that's covered by this is specifically around the business of social media and purporting to be more influential than you are. They're regulating you as a business itself. You could argue consumer testimonials, but that's not really the same thing, again, unless you're specifically being paid providing a product. That's where that gray area comes in, where, hey, that could be considered a consumer testimonial. So if you're telling people what to say or that has to be positive, then uh, it has to be disclosed. It has to be disclosed clearly and it is a deceptive practice. So, um, I think, unfortunately, what you're going to see is those kind of unscrupulous companies continue that behavior. This is by no means going to stop them because it is so gray, and it was already illegal. This isn't going to change that landscape. Um, but what it will do is hopefully clean up some of the Amazon reviews that you're reading. It might impact review brigading on movies and TVs. It might impact you being muted or blocked on social media websites. So you made it, like I said, to the end. So appreciate you. And until next time, have fun.